So we're going to take a look at a real easy robot that was built to navigate the Travel Centers of America website. We're going to go to the fuel, and we have a need to extract the fuel prices from its gas stations around the company, or its truck stops from around the country. We're going to store that information into a database so that it can be used for analytics later. It could be, we could do trending. We could take that data and send it off to other applications, or we could compare it against maybe we run another robot against another travel center of some sort, collect that information, and then have the analytics do some aggregation to say what prices are best and so forth. But for today, we're just going to actually extract all the information. And simply, we could do it in a multitude of ways. We could do it by postal code, by state and province, but we're just going to get everything all at once. So if I was a user that was going to have to extract this information every day, I would click on View All Locations. I'm then going to go through and extract all the information that's relevant to that particular site and load it into my spreadsheet or into my database. So we're going to be keying this information to somewhere else. So our robot's going to replace that manual process and then import all this into the database. So this is what it looks like in the website. And just to give you a look at the database, so we have a couple tables here where we have collected fuel details already. And here you see when the operation ran. We have an index that was for the location and for the details, so that we can marry them back up to each other. So we here you see the state, the actual particular station that they were at. We have a station ID. We generate the station ID, what type of diesel or what type of fuel it is, and what the price is. And then we capture some of the robotic process automation statistics as well. When what was first extracted was last extracted and so forth. So that would be all the fuel details, and then we actually have a separate table for the locations. So we store each of the locations in here. So as you can see, there's 257 locations, and we have again the location, the crossroads that we extracted from it, the phone number, what brand they're representing. And then here is the URL for the map it, where we extracted that from as well. So let's get into the robot. So here's a design studio, and this is the beginning of the robot. What we have done is we've linked it back, as you can see, our databases. We've linked back to our SQL database, so any information that we're going to query against and as well as update or insert is going to be through that database connection there. So here the very first step, we're going to load the page up. We're then again going to navigate down to the fuel prices. And you'll notice as well, we're not actually doing screen scraping. We're actually taking and using the code behind, looking for tags to navigate to where we go. So if the website changes up as typically done, we're not stuck on having to go back and find XY coordinates or those type of things. We're actually looking at the code behind, which you see down here. So we're going to click on that. So now we are going to actually navigate. As you see, we have all of the table rows that are in this table that are collected, and we're going to navigate through each of the items to look for the details that we need to extract. In this very first one, what we're doing is we're testing. We're looking for, if you'll notice here, there is we have a row with all the information, and then there's a row below that has just the restaurants and food. So what we're doing is we're actually just looking to see that for this particular tag, to make sure that we're collecting all that information. So we'll collect it here. We're going to extract the state. So here we have on the right hand side, you will see the details that we are going to fill in. As we start stepping through and extracting this information, we're going to load it to our variables here to the right hand side, and so that we are able to upload this to the database in the future. So what we're doing first is we're going to query against the state. So here's the actual query. We're going to say, so select the state from the states where the abbreviation is AL. So what we have here is just the abbreviation. we have a states table, which has the abbreviation and the formal name. So we want to store the formal name. We are able to store the formal name, or we can store it in the abbreviation. So we're going to now extract the station name. We're going to assign the station ID. And simply all we're doing is we're getting the station name. And here you'll see where we're assigning variables. We're going to stack the station name. We're going to extract that number, and then we're going to format it into a 3-digit number. So here you'll notice it's 054. We're going to make sure that we keep the leading zeros, so it's 054. And so the output's going to be that 054. So if I go down here to the fuel details, you'll see that we have the station name, we have the state, and we've actually got our date entered when we started working on this. The next step is we're going to query the database, and we are going to look for a location where the state's Alabama and the A station ID is 054, right? So if we execute this SQL, we come back with an ID. So we know that if we have an ID, that it's a station that is in the locations database and is there, and we don't have to add it. If for some reason we don't get that ID back, what we then do is we go down into this next row. We skip out of here, we come down to the next row, and we go ahead and we create that information in the locations table. We're going to assign the state ID, the location, the station ID, all that information that we need for the locations table, and then we'll store it in the locations table as a new record. Now we can also modify this to say query against all the information. If it doesn't match what we have or something changes, then let's go ahead and update it and store that information as well. So let's go. Here we're now going to step through each of the grades of gasoline, extract it, and then we're going to extract the price to go along with it. So you notice we know it's unleaded. The next one's going to be we're going to extract the pricing. You'll notice we've got the pricing down below. We know it's unleaded, station 54. And the next step would actually store it into the database. So we've completed the action for the very first row. We're going to then test the second row. You'll notice that we have an error here, but it's not an error. It's just saying there's no tag for it. Because we were searching for that particular row, that record, that tag there that tells us which ID it is. There's not one here, so we're going to actually skip it. So we'll go to the next one, and we see that we've picked up the next row that we need to extract the data from. Now, we could go back and we could extract this information as well and store this. This is newer. Store this information in the database as well, and say, okay, here's the restaurants that they actually have at this location as well. So that may be something we come back and do in the future. So let's actually take and run this in our debug mode and let you see what it looks like. We're not going to store it in the database at this time. And we'll start seeing results here in a minute, and you'll see it loading up. So there you go. So we can scroll down through here, and we can see it. It's loading up very quickly. We'll let it run all the way to the end. And there we have it. So we were able to extract all the rows. You see that there's a 1,355 records that we were able to extract from that website. Details for each of the 257 travel stations, and we can then store that data into the database. So what we'll do now is let's go ahead and create a scheduler so that we can have this run on its own. So let's go add, and we'll add our robot, single robot. Let's schedule it for daily, once a day, and we want it to start at 16:42. So there we go. We have our robot scheduled, and in 2 minutes we'll come back and we'll watch it kick off. Well, you can see it's 4:41, about 16:41, so this should kick off here in less than a minute. If we move over here to the admin, we can actually see that the robot is running, and we'll follow it up here in a minute when it's finished. And we can see back here in the scheduler that there was one run and there were no errors. If we go out to the database, and there's our 1,355 rows. So that's it in a nutshell. A quick, easy robot that replaces a human having to go collect that 1,355 rows and enter it into a spreadsheet or a database.